Hey, it's Joey Thurman. I'm excited to bring you Season 2 of the Fad or Future podcast. We live in a world where information is everywhere, easy to access, and sometimes not always accurate, especially in the health and wellness space, which is exactly why I created this show. There's two sides to every story, and I'm here to present both and let you decide, is it a fad or is it the future? Health fads come and go, but the science behind them is what makes them work. Or fail. I'm bringing the experts to you and putting the facts on the table so you can decide how and where to put your efforts in your own personal health and wellness journey. All right, what's going on? It's Joey Thurman. Here's another episode of the Fad or Future podcast. As I sip my optimal electrolytes, which are like gold right now. look at that plug, Dr. Lynch. I have
Yes.
Dr. Ben Lynch in front of me. And you've trained thousands of doctors. You're the founder of Strategene, Seeking Health. You also wrote Dirty Gene's book, which I have here in front of me. You're kind of doing a lot of things that a lot of normal doctors wouldn't be doing, because you have to look at the whole person and what's going on with the lifestyle and not just diagnosing things to diagnose them. And I just went through a course of his online, the Dirty Genes course, and it was really good. But first of all, thanks for coming on the show. I know we've been trying to get you on for quite some time, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, awesome to be here, Joey. And yeah, it's amazing where our paths take us, isn't it?
It is. I was talking to you beforehand. I was trying to get out to Washington like a year ago, and then 2020 happened, and all that other stuff. So we don't need to get into that. So what is it that you do? Because most people, when they hear Dirty Genes, like what is this? I mean, they may be familiar with a few genes, and but it's really an interesting thing that you're looking at the whole individual, as I said, and most doctors are spending 5 or 10 minutes and prescribing and just fixing whatever the previous doctor might have even told the person that they have. So what is it that you really do?
Well, another thing that all these health professionals are doing is they're guessing.
Mm.
I mean, let's be honest. Health professionals are guessing, and they're trying to guess what other health professionals didn't guess. And psychiatry is the biggest guessing of them all. Let's try this med or let's try that med and come back in a month and maybe we'll switch you. To me, when you are supporting the human body and an individual who's sitting across from you, you shouldn't be guessing. And health professionals are the third leading cause of death. So, that is not a good statistic. We have to fix that. So my job, as I would say, is to really try to reduce the guesswork. There's still going to be some guesswork, but let's minimize it. And then let's at least come up with some really good working theories. And that makes sense based upon a whole bunch of research and evidence that we have seen from all these researchers who, frankly, Joey, research is getting millions and millions and millions of dollars, and all this effort. It could be 1 to 2 years of research on one particular study. It's published, 3 people read it. So research is light years ahead of where medicine is today. And insurance companies are light years behind where medicine is today. Mm. So if you think about that, we have a lot to do. So my job is to reduce guesswork by reading the research that researchers are doing, that we as a society are funding and supporting, but nobody's reading and nobody's implementing in the everyday clinic, practice. So by doing that, I am delivering rapid utility for health professionals that is ahead of the curve, and it reduces guesswork and optimizes patient outcomes.
Okay. So if I was to, come into your clinic and talk about some sort of pain or illness or how I'm feeling, what is the process for you? Say, hey, I've been feeling nauseous for months, or I have headache, whatever, my symptom is. What do you start with?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't see patients anymore, but what I do and what I teach is still the same. I learned in class that 80% of the visit should be history. I mean, 80%. 10% should be physical, actually touching your patient. Oh my goodness. It's not scanning. We're not booking another appointment to scan you with some tool. We're actually using our hands eyes, ears, nose, and, touching the patient and determining what's going on. And then the other 10% is lab work, of a myriad of different things. But, history is major. So my focus was open-ended questions. It wasn't, do you have allergies? It was, describe, all the things that you're struggling with right now. And there's no chief complaint. It's all of them. Because what happens was, if someone is just, tell me your primary problem. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, okay. Where do we go from here? It is, give me all of them. And ideally, ahead of time, you give them to me on a timeline. So if your symptoms of GI issues started from, you remember your mom told you that you were such a fussy baby, you had colic all the time, you were burping and vomiting profusely, not sleeping, your eczema, you got asthma at 2 years old, your acid reflux persisted, so we had to put you on antacids at 4, and then you had all these ear infections and yada yada yada. And so you put that on a timeline, you can see the progression of symptoms. And symptoms, if you have certain symptoms, those certain symptoms will go deeper and they'll produce other symptoms and keep going. And it becomes, you see that trajectory. And so what I do when someone shares me their myriad of symptoms, and I'm talking, an average person could have 20, 30 different symptoms going on at a time. What I do is I start categorizing all of those in my head real time. Okay, that's a histamine problem, folate, histamine, glutathione. All right, detox. And I start categorizing all these symptoms, and I start thinking, okay, now which of these major pathways in the human body are being grossly affected and why? And so then I take these 30 symptoms and I lump them down into about 3 different pathways, which then comes down to about 3 different genes. Really gross, look, but that's what you want. You want a gross big picture look first. We don't want to zoom in. And that's the biggest problem is we go to specialists to solve our breathing difficulties. We need to go to generalists first. So I
Okay.
cast a big net.
Yeah, cast a big net, catch a lot of fish, and hopefully you get the right ones in there. So,
Mm-hmm.
and you talk about you narrow it down to maybe 3 different genes, and you talk about dirty genes. And can you explain what is a dirty gene? If people were to hear that word, I think most people be like, "What is this guy talking about?"
Yeah. So a dirty gene is simply a gene that is not functioning at its best.
Mm.
That's it. And there are 18,000 or so genes in the human body. And when I was working with my publisher with Dirty Genes, they were adamant on calling the book 7 Deadly Genes. They were adamant about it. They're like, oh, it's going to get tons of press. It's going to do really well. And I was like, I just don't, that's just not sitting right with me. I don't like it. I
Yeah.
don't care about the press. I just, I want this thing to be helping people for years to come. I don't want a blip of a bunch of media and, maybe it's a New York Times bestseller. Who cares? Because that only is a blip in time. And then now your book sucks and nobody's buying it and nobody's using it.
That's very admirable, though. I mean, because I'm in the process for pitching my second book, and they're like, "Well, are you opening to changing the title?" I'm like, "I love the title so much. We'll see what they come up with, and what the title is going to be." But yeah, I mean, most people, are really in it for getting that New York Times bestseller or making a bunch of
Yeah.
money. And if it can be called Dirty Genes, New York Times bestseller, amazing. But yeah, you just said 18,000 genes. They want to narrow it down to 7. That just doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, exactly. And they want to narrow it down to 7 and call them deadly. And I was like, well, that is actually doing a major, it's not appropriate because there are some very, very deadly genes out there.
Mhm.
And these people are not alive today because they were born with these genes. They lived maybe a month, maybe a year or two, and then they're gone because they inherited these really, really broken, damaging genes. And you can't really fix them.
Mhm.
They're just broken. And so I was explaining how our environment influences genetic expression. I was describing how lifestyle and our food choices and how vegans can be B12 deficient and contribute to high homocysteine, which then causes a problem in your neurological and your neurotransmitters and your detoxification and all that. And then the writer who was helping, she goes, so these genes are basically dirty then, dirty genes. And I was like, oh my God, that's beautiful. That's it.
That's good.
And yeah, so in the cover, they sent me a cover rendition of Dirty Jeans, and they showed me bites in the letters. Like it was like pixels bitten out of the letters. I was like, no, those are broken. That's broken. They're dirty. Put some like slime on the cover and something. And so my wife came up with the concept of having dust on the table and you wipe it clean. So if you look at the cover of Dirty Jeans, you can actually see the rag going across the table.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, actually, I wouldn't have known that, and now it's actually quite genius. Yeah.
Yeah.
My first book was just a cover of me shirtless, so that's all I had. Okay,
yeah,
so
well, I know what market you were attracting to.
well, I'm like, it's funny. It's when I interviewed David Sinclair, he gave me his book, and he's got the DNA molecule on there. So I'm standing holding my book because he was all excited to get mine. I'm like, how a fitness professional sells a book versus how a Harvard geneticist sells a book was a little bit different. In Dirty Jeans, you've got a clean counter right here.
Yeah.
All right. So what are some of these things that people? How can they know if they have dirty genes? I mean, you said there's some that are just genetic, right? That are just bad and they're absolutely not going to live long, which is horrible. But how can we really know like what genes are dirty, and how do we go about fixing them if we can?
It's very easy, Joey. And that's why it's so cool, is because, I can struggle with runny nose or, recurring nosebleeds. When I was a kid, I had nosebleeds constantly. So any symptoms that you have, any of them, whether it's fatigue or you can't focus or you woke up on the wrong side of the bed that day, or maybe you're sweating profusely, or you have difficulty breathing when you're exercising, or maybe you lifted weights and your post-workout soreness, my God, it's lasting a whole week this time. These are dirty genes. And so if you have the ability to look at what symptoms you have, step back and look at what actions that you did in order to trigger those things, or what actions you didn't do to trigger them. Maybe you didn't go to bed on time and you watched Netflix all night, or maybe you took too much of a specific supplement because you read on some Facebook group, it's so amazing, and all these people were saying how amazing it was, and you took it and it was great the first day, but man, you're on it now day 6 and you're starting to feel really weird and you don't know what it is. It can't be that supplement because everybody says how good it is. So it's basically a dirty gene is triggering symptoms, which is telling you, hey, you need to make some lifestyle, dietary, environmental, or nutrient changes in your life. But we don't do that. We think, oh, I have a symptom. Now I need to suppress that symptom. Antacids, antidepressants, anxiolytics.
Right.
These are, everything's anti. And the body is slapping you in the face or hurting you somewhere, trying to get you to change, and you're ignoring it, and then you're suppressing it, telling it to shut up. Well, if you tell something to shut up for a long period of time, it's going to hold its internal anger and frustration, and it's going to blow up with something bigger. It's like, oh, you're not taking care of that? All right, I'm going to give you cancer now.
It's like an argument with my wife. Like eventually you don't bring it up, and then one day it just like rears its ugly head, and then you've got all of this stuff, right? So, I mean, what you're saying is the common, I'll say American problem, but this is, kind of a worldwide problem. We complain about all these things, right? You get up, you've got a sore back, or your joints are achy, or you've got a headache, and we have just become accustomed to having these issues, and we either pop a pill like a Tylenol or antacid for it, or we just live with it as a course of everyday and normal life, or so we think. But taking, like, I mean, you talk about this in your course, is taking like a Tylenol or antacid actually affects one gene and can affect the other ones and have this cascading event. So can you speak to these things that people are doing that could be having an effect on everything else inside their body?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of people are taking NSAIDs for post-workout soreness, or, they take them before playing game. I mean, I was playing on a rec soccer league for a while, and one of the names of the teams was ibuprofen. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And they're
like
a bit
me in
older.
college.
Yeah.
I'd pop 800 milligrams before a college hockey game. And now I was taking your course. I'm like, oh my God. And my wife came in, and I was going down a whole rabbit hole. I was doing 800 milligrams twice a day because I had the back problem and I was 225 pounds. And I'm like, holy
Yeah.
shit, what's happening? And like Dr. Lynch. Yeah, dude. I mean, people are just popping all this sort of stuff. So, I mean, what's happening to them internally?
Yeah, what's happening internally is you need to understand what the side effects of these drugs are.
Mm.
And then you need to understand, again, what the mechanism of action is on these medications. What actions are they doing in order to contribute to these side effects? And so let's talk about Tylenol or acetaminophen for a second,
Mm-hmm.
or paracetamol, or whatever they call it overseas. And Tylenol, one dose of Tylenol will deplete your body's primary antioxidant called glutathione, one of them. And so you're like, okay, well, so what? Well, glutathione is your body's primary antioxidant. It eliminates hydrogen peroxide in your body. Your body generates hydrogen peroxide. It makes it. And your glutathione will eliminate it. Glutathione also helps you get rid of arsenic. It helps you get rid of mercury. It helps you get rid of chlorine, formaldehyde, mothballs. So if you're swimming in a swimming pool and you took a Tylenol for some reason and you're sucking down the chlorine and then you're drinking unfiltered water and then you take a shower and you jump in the hot tub after workouts, and then you come into your home that's been newly remodeled with cabinets of pressboard and your desk in your office is formaldehyde, and now you got a new carpet, also leaching formaldehyde, and then you got mothballs in the closet because your coats are having moth issues. So now you're bombarding your system. Now your body is generating a heap load of hydrogen peroxide, and it's accumulating toxic metabolites of chlorine, formaldehyde, and naphthalene, which you can't get rid of. And now you become sensitive to smells. And now you walk down the halls of Home Depot in the pesticide aisle, and you're super sensitive to smells. And your husband or wife comes in, or your partner comes in with some new shirt that came from a store, say Target, and it's brand new, and they tell you to put it on. You put it on, and it just reeks of formaldehyde because all new clothes are reeked in formaldehyde. And you become sensitive to that. And you're like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? You go to the doctor and you tell them you're sensitive to smells. It's like, oh, it's all in your head. And now you're searching for what's going on. And it all started because you thought Tylenol was safe, and you're not consuming good foods which produce your natural glutathione levels, like broccoli sprouts or radish sprouts, or cruciferous vegetables. You're not supplementing with things that lead to glutathione. So you're problematic, and maybe you're overtraining too, because when you train, you're depleting your glutathione stores. So it's what I just described is a common everyday occurrence. And if you do not understand which genes are being dirtied by your actions, you are going to struggle with these common everyday occurrences, which are annoying, but you go to the doctor and they don't really help you because they're not at the scale enough to help. How many times have you been to the doctor where we have a little pitiful symptom like chronic nosebleeds,
Sure.
or sensitive smells, or a little rash of eczema on your cheek or your butt, and you're kind of embarrassed to go to the doctor over such a little thing, but it gets worse and they don't help you because it's not, life threatening.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what you're saying is because, we have a 2.5-year-old, almost 3-year-old son, and we give him organic baby clothes. And my wife washes everything ahead of time. And I used to laugh at her. And honestly, until a few days ago when I finished your course, when I'd get sent products and new clothes all the time, I'll just put it on and work out. And wife's like, you need to wash those clothes. And I was like, no, I don't need to wash them. And then I was watching your course and like, oh, it's got benzene on it. And I was like, oh man. So I literally I apologized to her. I said, okay, look, because that's, for him, everything that goes on his skin and he's smelling, and we're really careful of that. And we're crashing with my in-laws right now. We sold their place. So we don't even want the yard sprayed with all these chemicals, which I would definitely want to get into. And we're very careful about everything that, we give to him because he's a new life. Right.
Right.
But I need to take care of myself too. And something as simple as washing brand new clothes could help me, because as you talk about, there's benzene on these clothes. Can you speak to things like that people don't really know about, like washing your clothes, or the chemicals that are sprayed on the lawn, or even walking in your house with shoes on, for God's
Oh boy.
sakes? Like
Yeah.
people, I always just didn't do it because we lived downtown Chicago for years, and the amount of not only dog crap, but like human fecal matter and rat and all that sort of stuff, we didn't want to bring it into our house. And our son was crawling around, and he actually puts his hand in his mouth. So all these little things that people just don't know about. Can I speak to that?
Yeah, I would say, a big one is natural gas in your home.
Mhm.
It's the convenience of natural gas is amazing. You have a pipe that comes in, and you can have heaters around you in outdoor seating in restaurants. That's great. You're sitting out in December at the ski slope, and you're outside, warm, but there's a strange smell right there, and you ignore it. It's not really problematic. And then, half an hour into your dinner or your lunch, whatever it is, you start feeling a bit tired, and then another 15 minutes go by. Now you're getting a little bit irritable, and then you put your skis back on, you start skiing, and you just don't feel right. You're like, what the hell was that? Well, you just suck down formaldehyde and you know gas byproducts, combustion byproduct for the last 45 minutes while you're sitting underneath that thing, or it's in your home fireplace, or it's
Mm.
at your cooktop at home. And everybody wants natural gas because that's the best to cook on.
Right.
And if you don't turn on the hood, that's a problem. If you have gas heat in your home through forced air with your furnace, is that not burning quite right? And I will tell you that every time I would come home in our old home and we had a gas stove, when we bought it, it had electric. And I ripped that sucker out because I was going to get my wife the best. And I plumbed in our own gas lines, and I was watching, I went to, I think, Home Depot, and I took their class on on gas line.
Of course you
Uh,
did. Of course you did.
yeah. And I plumbed it all, and it worked and didn't blow up the house. And I was all proud of this amazing stove that we got in our home. And I started noticing that when my wife cooked, she got irritable,
Hmm.
and she wasn't irritable prior. I was like, oh, that's just whatever, she's just more cranky these days. And then our cat would eat her dinner or all meals with her dry food bowl um, close to the gas stove, and she started having little twitches. And I was like, oh, well, she's just getting old. And then I would notice, I'd walk in after doing landscape construction all day. I'd walk in the house. My wife, we're a big cooking family because cooking's great, and I would smell it. I could smell the natural gas, and I got sensitive to it. And I was like, oh my God, turn the fan on, open the windows. And my wife is like, what? And then I called the repair guys to come out. Will you test the combustion of this, how clean it is? They came out 3 different times. Oh, it's fine. I got rid of the damn thing after I started studying with Dr. Bill Ray, who was the leading clinical ecologist in the world. He had the Environmental Health Center in Dallas, Texas, top doc in environmental medicine by far. And he's like, you got to get rid of that stuff. So I ripped it out. And my wife's moods were more stable. I came in the house, I didn't smell that stuff. Cat still had her seizures, but I was trying to fix her, but didn't. So anyway, natural gas is a big one.
So what's happening inside of our bodies? In this course, I think you referenced, natural gas to kind of like smog and
Yes.
in the city. And if you're going to go for a run and think about it, we lived on Chicago Avenue in downtown Chicago. And when I was training people in person, and I was training for Spartan races, it was like 2.5 miles to work, and I would run at 5 p.m. Rush hour
Oh
traffic,
my.
and I'm thinking, I'm literally, as I'm watching your course, it's like, oh my God, this could be part of the reason why I was so kind of irritable and snippy. And
Yeah.
then since we've sold our condo, we're in the suburbs, and obviously much more fresh air. And then, you've got your 2020 quarantine issues, but I'm outside every single day, or I go for a walk, and I'm not going for a walk where there's hundreds of cars passing by me on a busy street now. And it's like, oh my God, like I was basically just inhaling smog from all of these cars. So what's happening?
Yeah.
Why does that happen? Why is this causing this irritability, and what's happening to our genes?
You're dirtying your genes, and the genes are not able to function at their best. So and you're like, okay, you're talking genetics again, but it's really simple. Genes have jobs to do. That's it. You have to understand that genes do things. And if you require them to do something that is outside of their usual routine, then the usual stuff doesn't get done. So imagine that, you wake up in the morning and you have your usual routine of brushing your teeth and making your bed and feeding the kids and feeding yourself and maybe working out or whatever it is. And this one day, your alarm doesn't go off, but you wake up like crazy because there's this tree that just crashes on your roof. Boom, done. All your routine stuff goes out the window. You're dealing with that. And then you finally open your inbox a week later and it's like 2,000 messages. Your kids are hungry because you've been eating at McDonald's for the last 2 weeks while you're dealing with this. And so, just imagine your own life. You have to deviate. So if you are putting a bunch of outside work into your body through your choices and your environmental exposures, that is all work your genes have to do, which is taking them away from their usual things that they need to do. So if you are exposing yourself to chlorine or formaldehyde or mothballs or arsenic in your drinking water because you're not filtering it, or arsenic in your white rice or your chicken or what have you, then your glutathione is not able to get rid of the hydrogen peroxide that is generated in your body on its own. So anytime you have a neurotransmitter in your brain break down, serotonin, for example, serotonin generates a huge amount of hydrogen peroxide, massive amounts of hydrogen peroxide. So if you're totally stressed out, you're making all these neurotransmitters, they break down and they emit a bunch of ammonia, which is toxic, and they emit a bunch of hydrogen peroxide, which is toxic. And now you start to have brain fog and irritability and all these, slower symptoms or slower cognitive thinking. And you don't know it's because your glutathione levels are low because of these outside things. So basically, you have a choice. Are you going to let your genes do what they do on a normal basis, as they have been through thousands of years? Or are you going to inundate them with the new things in our environment, which they haven't evolved yet in order to deal with that? They just can't. And infertility, Joey, is skyrocketing.
Yeah.
It is a major issue in your age group.
Yeah.
Your age group. In 30s, people are in their upper 20s and low 30s, and they're infertile. So something's up.
Yeah, I mean,
it's dirty genes.
And I think a lot of the times, I've had friends that, it took a long time to get pregnant and stuff. I'm like, did you go have your boys checked out? Like, you see how they're working, how they're swimming, and like, oh, it can't be me. I think as guys, like we're taught we're supposed to be masculine, we're supposed to be okay, and it can't possibly be you. But do you want to have a little miracle? Go and, make your donation in a cup, see how they're swimming, see how they're working, and then you can solve the problem. I think that's part of the issue where you said, like, there's something on your skin or whatever, we don't want to do that. Obviously, this is a much bigger thing right there. But guys, if you're listening and you're having a hard time getting your wife pregnant, like, you possibly could be the problem. So go get checked out. And you talked about, all these other things like water and air. Like, how do we kind of break through all this noise? Because there's a lot of things. This can really freak you out. You start going like, oh my God, I've got a gas stove. I do this. I live in the city. How do we tackle this? And what's the bare minimum thing that people should do? Obviously, like, getting a Strategene test and going through all that and seeing someone such as yourself is obviously, the best thing, that they could do. But right now, people listening to this, like, what are some tangible behaviors that they can make their lives a little bit better?
Yeah, it is hard. And what's really cool is it's your next choice. You just start with your next choice. And look, you know what you're doing that you shouldn't be doing. And if you become habitual at it. Lately, admittedly, I've been on my phone at night in bed because I'm behind. And I think if I get a few more emails done, or I check my stocks at this hour and make some plans, maybe I can next day I'll execute it better. Well, I'm not executing anything better. I'm kidding myself. And I know I am, because I'm staring at blue light, which is ruining my melatonin. I got to stop it, So you start getting in these patterns and these bad habits, and you got to pull it. It's just like in the movie, What About Bob? Baby steps. Baby steps, Bob. Come on, baby steps. You can do it. Get up out of the chair, walk to the door.
Okay. I like that. All right. So obviously,
okay. And we have this. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So people are aware, I think right now, like I think most individuals probably aware that they should stay off their laptop or their phone, right before night. And I don't think they specifically knew why, because that's just messing with your melatonin production. And then people will try to pop melatonin. For me, I tried it one time and I was like, okay, I can't do that, because I took it and it had kind of the adverse reaction
Oh,
for
and I know
being
why. I know
okay.
why. And that's the cool thing with Strategene. So, you look at your genetic test and genetic testing, well, you want to get in the weeds of genetic testing here
Yeah,
for a second?
let's go, Doc. Let's do it.
All right. So genetic testing pisses me off. Uh, and when you get your results back from 23andMe and it says that you eat asparagus, your pee will stink, or you have a 1.7 increased chance of getting prostate cancer, or you have a 2.1% it's full decreased risk of colon cancer, what does that tell me? Okay, well, all right, so is that static? I mean, like, is that set in stone? I mean, what lifestyle changes do I do here? I don't want prostate cancer, colon cancer. Okay, I can go to McDonald's now, because my risk of prostate cancer is high, but colon cancer is low. So I'm just going to go to fast food. It's faster and easier, and we think it's cheaper, but it's not.
Right.
So your ability to make lifestyle or personal changes is not good from these tests. And so then you order a different one and they come back and they say, okay, you have this particular gene, let's say MTHFR, which is, everybody talks about this gene, including myself. And I have a whole website dedicated to it. And so you learn that you have this MTHFR gene, which makes your body's number one form of folate, which is called methylfolate. You learn to not take folic acid, which is great. You stop taking folic acid because it messes up that particular gene. And you start taking this really powerful form of folate because you have MTHFR, you have to. So I suck down a bunch of methylfolate, and the genetic test tells me to. Joey, we've identified you have MTHFR 677 variant, and you have a reduced ability to make methylfolate, and consume methylfolate for the rest of your life. Done. And without any mention that you can find natural methylfolate in liver. I can't eat liver, but anyway, or leafy green vegetables. Or if you consume protein, you're getting choline. So you don't really need as much folate if you're consuming sufficient protein containing meals. But God, if you're a vegan or vegetarian and you're not really eating too many veggies, because a lot of vegetarians, come on, carbitarians.
Yep.
So I was a carbitarian, was a vegetarian. So most genetic testing just tells you if you have a genetic variant and what simple step you should take. And it's usually a supplement. I call it a supplement mill. It's identify the problem, provide the solution, and I can talk about a mainstream problem that we have today, with a certain infection, we have a problem now, we have the solution, right? But is the solution really, a pill or a jab? No, it's big picture.
Mm-hmm.
So genetic testing should show you which actions you should take and which actions you shouldn't take in the realms of lifestyle, environment, food, and nutrition. And if you look at all of those combined and you know which of those actions will slow the function of the gene or make it dirty, and you also have the flip side, which actions should I take in all those categories to support my gene, then you're really onto something. And that's what our genetic test does. And is it easy? No, it's a pain. It's really difficult. But once you learn how to use it, it's transformative, because a genetic test, people think it's like you did your SAT. So you fill in all the bubbles for your SATs, and then you get a score back. It's 1060 or 1080. I did miserable. I got like a 1080. And
we're not going to talk about my ACT score, because it just I skipped an entire section, not on purpose.
Yeah, well, whatever.
That's why I played hockey in college. It's fine.
There you go. That's right. Well, I rode, so
there you go.
But genetic testing is something that you should utilize your whole life and refer back to the report that you got to make choices that will support cleaning your genes, and you can reference back to it all the time. And the book Dirty Genes is not a book that you sit down and read by the fire on vacation once and you're done. It's a book that you reference. It's a guide.
Right. So
genetic testing should be a guide. It's not you look at your genes and then you supplement with all these supplements the rest of your life and you're done. That's not how it works. Okay. So we basically provide you a map.
That makes sense. All right, so I took your strategy test. So let's, as people know on the show, I'm a guinea pig. So uh, can we go over some of my results, and maybe some other results will help people listening as well?
Yeah. So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, Joey. Are you comfortable talking about some symptoms in your life?
Dude, I'm doing a podcast where I've done everything from ketamine therapy to being vegan for 3 months. So
All right.
bring it at me.
Okay. Any history of gut issues in your life ever, of being sensitive to yogurts or kefir or kombuchas or fermented foods, or some probiotics just didn't sit well with you, or you're drinking wine and it's problematic for you?
Absolutely, and admittedly, I have terrible gas.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
which would be my which would be good. I mean, it bad, like foul smelling gas.
Okay. Well, there's multiple things with that, but with if you drink wine, how does wine sit with you typically?
Yeah, I don't feel too great doing it. Certain types of red wine I'm okay with. I don't do the sweet stuff. Also, honestly, lately, the past couple of years, if I have a glass or two of wine, I wake up the next day like I had just drank a case of beer,
Hmm.
and I feel completely out of sorts.
Okay. Well, if you look on your histamine or your strategy report and you open up your histamine pathway, there's a gene called DAO, and we talk about DAO in the Dirty Genes book. So this is one of the super seven genes I talk about in the book. And to go back and discuss that a little bit, how can you write a book on seven genes when there's 18,000 in the human body? Well, there's some genes, if they are not functioning right, they put a huge load on a bunch of other genes having to step up and go to work and step up and go to bat for you. And now you're dirtying those whole bunch of genes. And so DAO is my gut gene.
Mm.
And if your DAO gene is dirty, your gut is going to be problematic, because if you have high histamine in your gut, high histamine is associated with leaky gut. It's associated with inflammatory bowel disorders, and so I can just pick one gene and I can really focus on your gut health just from that.
Mm.
And NOS3 is another gene I talk about. NOS3, if it's dirty, your cardiovascular system entirely is messed up. So there's no question, 100%. And so, I pick genes that have major, major impact on people's lives. And then the good thing about it is, if you know you have these genetic variants, you can make, again, no guesswork here, that's strategy, strategic choices, which reduces your guesswork, which then amplifies your ability to minimize those symptoms or even eliminate them completely,
Mm.
which is really powerful. So when I was looking at your histamine pathway, DAO is commonly varied in the population, and it's actually a good thing to have a more sensitive DAO gene. If you look at ancestors, if ancestors ate food that was riddled with bacteria in it and it was going to kill them, having a slower DAO increased their histamine in their gut, which allows them to have explosive diarrhea to get rid of that toxin or bacteria out of their system. And it also taught them, if they maybe ate a plant or something that wasn't good, maybe these were the healers, in tribes, where they could take a bite of something like, oh, that's poisonous, don't touch that. And it would save the entire tribe because they were super sensitive to it.
Mm.
So we've inherited that from our ancestors in our modern day societal living, where we know what's toxic for the most part and we know what isn't. But now you're living with these super sensitive genes in a modern day environment, which isn't really good for survival. It's more of a pain in the butt.
Quite
And
literally.
so, yeah, and if you learn that you have this slower histamine processing gene in your gut, then you look at your probiotics in your fridge, you're like, wow, I've been taking Lactobacillus fermentum and Lactobacillus bulgaricus. These are two in my probiotic. And God, you know what? I know probiotics are good for me, but I've been taking these for the past 2 months and I haven't been right ever
Mm.
since. I've been a little bit more irritable. Sleeping has been a problem, and my gut just feels off. And I'm more sensitive to foods. And then you look at that, and then you look at your Strategene report, and you're like, oh my God, my DAO is dirty, it's slower. And he's saying right here, supplements, to be careful of supplements containing these things. and so on. So it's very informative that way.
Okay, so I should stay away from the Greek yogurt and the lactobacillus.
Well, lactobacillus, so bifidobacter bacteria, probably your friend. Do not make any histamine at all. They're very, very safe for the most part. And lactobacillus can also be helpful, but some strains are more problematic than others. Lactobacillus casei, lactobacillus bulgaricus, and lactobacillus fermentum, these all increase histamine.
Hmm.
And histamine is good. It's not like histamine is bad. You need histamine to stimulate stomach acid in the right amount. You have too much histamine, you start getting acid reflux. And then if you have too little histamine in your digestive system, then you're going to get constipated because histamine stimulates peristalsis. And so the movement of your stool through your system. So, there's benefits to histamine, but you can't have too much. So that is one. And then I'm going to look at your serotonin pathway. Okay. Methylation. So B12, you have a gene which reduces your ability to carry vitamin B12. And if you are consuming folic acid, this gene is called TCN1 and TCN2. And this gene may have decreased cellular and plasma concentration of transcobalamin 2. This translates to lower cell availability of vitamin B12. So I'll ask you, when you get your lab testing, do you usually see that your B12 is elevated or your plasma B12 is normal? It looks good, and maybe it's too high. Yeah.
I've had multiple blood work tests. And
Okay. So here's what a lot of people need to understand is when you get a blood test of B12 or blood test of a lot of things, who cares? It doesn't matter what's in your blood. It needs to get inside the cell. That's where it needs to go. That's its ultimate destination. So you can have all the blood levels you want of B12, and it could be not doing a damn thing. It's like having the keys to your car at home, and you just got dropped off at your friend's house to go pick up your car at their house, and you don't have the keys. Does that happen? Right? So you got the keys. They're in your drawer at home. You have them, but they're not where they're supposed to be. So you can't do any work. So your B12 is there, but it can't function. So if you have this genetic variant of transcobalamin, which reduces your ability to transport your ultra important vitamin B12, then you should be taking really, really good forms of vitamin B12 to help that and saturate the hell out of it. So there's some chance. So if you have very few carrier proteins in your blood and you have very low B12 in your blood, what's the likelihood of you being able to carry a little bit of B12 on a little bit of transport proteins? Pretty low, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a lot of B12, so that maybe you take a 5,000 microgram lozenge of methylcobalamin and you do it daily and you notice, wow, that's really helping me right now because you've saturated your blood. Your blood is just rich of B12. And so your little transcobalamin carriers that are floating around your blood, there's so much B12 in there, it's certain to bind some. But here's another kicker. Transcobalamin 2 is, if you look right on your pathway in your Strategene report, it is slowed down by folic acid. So if you're born with this slower transcobalamin 2 gene, and you are consuming folic acid is binding to what little transcobalamin you have, which is preventing your vitamin B12 to bind to it and be delivered inside the cell. Make sense?
Yeah.
So folic acid is gumming up your already dirty gene and making it dirtier. So life recommendation, avoid folic acid. And that is a huge one. When I surveyed over 5,000 people years ago, what was the number one thing that I informed them else did, that was the major turnaround for them by far, Joey, it was remove folic acid from their diet.
Okay, so what types of things should people be getting rid of to take the folic acid out?
Well, number one is any processed grains, for the most part. Any processed grains has got folic acid. which is really cool, because if you're focused on eliminating folic acid because you have a dirty TCN2 gene, and let's say your TCN2 gene isn't even dirty, it's fine. But if you're consuming a lot of folic acid, that transcobalamin gene is now being saturated by folic acid. And even if you have good B12 and you're consuming a lot of processed wheat or processed flours or energy bars that got folic acid or energy drinks that got folic acid because you're tired all the time, so now you're on this vicious cycle to drink all these energy drinks and supplements that have these B complexes, which with folic acid, to give you that boost of energy. It's a false sense of security because you're just keeping that gene dirty, and you're wringing out a dry sponge trying to get a drop of water of energy out of you. So the number one thing you do is you eliminate these processed foods. And by doing that, you're going to be reducing your exposure to folic acid. And if you do that, you're going to be cleaning up not just your TCN genes, but a whole bunch of other ones too. So folate transport, so breastfeeding. Oh my. So how old is your child?
He'll be 3 in February. So
Okay.
he did breastfeed for, it was like 17, 18 months, I believe.
Awesome. Yeah. And so we think that breast milk is inherently beautiful, and it is. It's great. But as Lily Nichols talks about in her book, Real Food for Pregnancy, and on her websites and her blog articles, she's brilliant, by the way. Breast milk is as healthy as the mother.
Mm.
If the mother is nutrient deficient, the breast milk is nutrient deficient.
Yep.
And if you're taking a prenatal that has folic acid in it, then you are gumming up the folic acid transport. And even if you're eating your leafy green vegetables, if you're eating your liver, because you know that's good for you, but you're taking a prenatal with 800 micrograms of folic acid, and you're also maybe eating a few processed foods, then your ability to deliver the good active form of folate to your developing child's brain is significantly reduced, because these folate binding proteins get gummed up from folic acid. And so you have to eliminate that as a mother in order to deliver good forms of folate to your developing baby and yourself as well. Because face it, a prenatal is for you, your baby, and also your grandkids, especially if you have a girl in the womb, because her eggs are being developed, in utero.
Wow. Yeah. When my wife Maria was pregnant, nothing but organic, nothing processed, and I think she was very aware. She's her master's in science, so very, very smart. And that's what she even started doing this before she even got pregnant. She's like, I want to make sure that everything I'm putting into my body is going to be feeding this baby, and
Brilliant.
not even these things like, oh, maybe it's okay to have a glass of wine. Maybe she's like, no, I want to 100% make sure, like, well, we didn't know if it was a boy or a girl at the time, but make sure that they are absolutely okay. And I'm doing everything I can for this child. I mean, the saying goes, like, you are what your food eats, not even necessarily what you eat. So I think that's a good tip for people, and especially people that are about to have a child, is make sure what you're putting in your body is going to take care of that kid too. I know you're tight on time. Let's do one more on my Strategene report.
Okay, before we do that, I want to share this amazing statement that I just found. Panic disorder is an anxiety disorder characterized by sudden, unexpected attacks of intense fear and anticipatory anxiety. Lifetime prevalence is 1 to 3%. Genetically complex with an estimated heritability of 48%.
Wow.
48% passed on. And that is because if you look in the mechanisms of serotonin pathway and your dopamine pathway and the genes involved, and understanding the mechanisms in which your genes in these pathways get dirty, SSRIs during pregnancy is a major one. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors and so on. If you're taking those while pregnant, you could be passing on. And it's tough because you want to blame yourself, but there's, I want to really urge you not to get the information that you so deserve and that you need. Nobody's talking about this stuff. So there's something called translational epigenetics, which is what actions that you take during pregnancy and pre-pregnancy, men, you too, are then being passed on to your child. And so So Joey, my big focus right now, our tagline at Seeking Health is optimizing life. And that's truly what our focus is. So my next book is on pregnancy and preconception. And I've got heaps of notes on that. But anyway, kudos to your wife for being so on it, because I certainly wasn't. And my wife was consuming folic acid. The first time she got pregnant was, God, I mean, no, eons ago. Our oldest now is 18, so I guess 19 years ago. First thing I did, ran out and got folic acid. No kidding. Let's see another gene here. So you have a faster MAO-A. So MAO-A is a genetic variant which processes amines. So serotonin is a big one. And so if you have a faster MAO-A, your serotonin levels have the susceptibility, not the ultimate, it's not set in stone, but they have an increased susceptibility to depleting your serotonin levels faster. Now, since you are a male, this gene is X-linked. So you only have, one chromosome has MAO-A in it, So it gets complicated. So men typically have a slower MAO-A gene than women by default. But since you are male, a faster MAO-A isn't entirely totally fast, but it's still important to know. So I want to ask you this. And there's a lot of other genes involved it's not just MAO-A, but I discussed this in the book. So I'm going to keep it simple without adding another 4 or 5 genes on top of it. Sure. If you do that, it makes the algorithm more accurate, but it's more complicated. But anyway, 5-HTP. Have you ever taken 5-HTP in your life?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, 5-HTP is a supplement that helps support your serotonin. So if you look on your Strategene pathway, you'll see one step away from your actual serotonin neurotransmitter is a gene, I believe, called DDC. So you have to look this up.
Would this have been I took antidepressants when I was a kid. Would this have been?
Yes. Okay. This could be very related to that.
So yes, I was on Zoloft when I was 14, 15 years old, and then in college for a few months as well. And I stopped taking it because it made me not feel right.
Okay. So Zoloft mechanism of action is presumed linked. See, look at this. They're prescribing drugs for certain things, and they don't even know how the drug acts. The mechanism of action of Zoloft is presumed to be linked to the inhibition of the brain's uptake of serotonin. Studies at clinically relevant doses in men have demonstrated that Zoloft blocks the uptake of serotonin into human platelets. So what this means, if it's linked to the inhibition of uptake of serotonin, it's going to, there's either uptake or there's reuptake. So I don't know what they're talking about here. The FDA did a crappy job of explaining this. Surprise, surprise. But without going into too much detail, you have to transport your serotonin and it's stored in vesicles. So your serotonin is stored in like these little balls, like little bubbles, and it stays there until you have a stimulus to pop those bubbles and let the serotonin out. So you have to transport these things into part of your brain, and then they get released from the bubbles and they bind to a receptor. And so your serotonin receptor, you have a slow one. So your ability to receive the serotonin on these receptors isn't as effective. So you need more serotonin to give an effect, because that receptor is not so, in high numbers. Yeah. But you have other receptors that are, average, and other ones that are faster. And then I have another one which you have a no call, which we don't know. And then your serotonin transport, your ability to transport serotonin is slower. So your ability to carry your serotonin into the active part of your brain is reduced. So if you were put on antidepressants as a kid because you were sad, I assume.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I was 14 when I was diagnosed with depression. So yeah, I mean, I speak
Yeah.
of this,
So
publicly.
I'm
So
I'm looking at here, and you have a slower ability to make your serotonin. Your TPH2 gene is slower, and that gene is responsible to make your serotonin. So for you, 5-HTP supplement, the typical recommended dose is 50 milligrams. That could be a game changer for you. That could be one of those things that just turns the lights on in your brain and that lifts the depression. And look, there's no guessing. I'm staring at your genes. I know how your serotonin is made. I know how it's transported, and I know how your receptors are acting. So there's no guesswork here.
hmm,
And I know how your serotonin is processed out of your body. You have a fast processing of serotonin. You have a slow synthesis of producing it, and you have a slow ability to transport it in the active part of your brain. And in the active part of your brain, you might have you're showing some conflicting faster or slower. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different receptors of serotonin. So there's differences there. Some are
hmm,
slower, some are faster. But get this, organic food for you, very important. Why? Pesticides slow your receptors down even more.
hmm.
So once again, I'm just staring at this one map here from
Yeah,
Strategene. That's it. I can make all this information from staring at this map, which how strategic is that for you?
yeah. No, that's
Amazing,
huge.
right?
So I mean, I eat 95% organic as it is, and try to stay away from the dirty dozen. And people look that up. If you want to know, each year they change the dirty dozen, right? On what you should be environmental. Can't remember the
Yes. Yeah.
working
It's
group.
it's pretty consistent, but it's across the board. But strawberries are a huge issue.
Yeah.
And let's say you kick ass with that,
Hmm.
and you send your kid to school. Schools are loaded with pesticides and herbicides. Your neighbor's yard, maybe they run and go get the ball. Maybe they just had the orca whale truck just spray,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so your kid runs over there. So it's we do our damnedest to do this, and you take the shoes off in your home and all that. We do the same thing,
yeah,
and but you just do your best. But it's cool when you know what to do strategically.
yeah. Okay, so
So I give
you
5-HTP a shot.
okay? So take 5-HTP and
Try it.
see how I feel. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
All right. Well, Doc, so I've got one more question for you. I really appreciate you taking the time. So, where do you want the future of medicine and health to head?
Individualized personal empowerment, reducing the need for people to have to go to health professionals to support their common everyday issues. Depression, you should not have to see a doctor for depression. You should not have to see a doctor for running nosebleeds. You should not have to see a doctor for cold hands and feet that is a sign of cardiovascular dysfunction. You should not have to go to a doctor for headaches or migraines or eczema, psoriasis, or or sensitivity to foods. You shouldn't have to see a doctor for any of this. Anxiety, irritability, bipolar, you shouldn't have to see a doctor for any of that. All that should be on your own. And if you look at your genes and how your genes are working, and you have the tools to start cleaning them up and understand how they work, nobody's taught us, Joey, what genes do what, or it's all kept in the dark. And we think that these people wearing white coats, giving us these weird, colorful tablets with engraved letters on them, is the miracle cure, and it's nonsense. We have a virus now that is wiping out a portion of the population, and they are really dirty genes. They're just dirty. That's it. The people who don't have dirty genes are just fine from this thing. So it's I want personal empowerment. That's what it is, and my job is to provide the tools to help people do that.
Dr. Ben Lynch, where can people find more about you and strategy and everything else?
Strategene, Trategene. And so we have strategene.me. And so that is where you can find Strategene. And I will tell you right now, it is not for the faint of heart. You don't think that you're going to get a report that's going to tell you what to do. You're going to have to sit down like Joey did here and watch the Dirty Genes course, read the book, watch some videos, get on some webinars, and learn how this thing works. It's like if I push a piano into your house for Christmas, and don't think you're going to sit down and be Beethoven overnight. It's just, you got to put the work in.
Yeah,
Um,
very true.
yeah. And I want to ask you one more question here,
Yeah.
Joey. Ever struggle with headaches or migraines?
Yes. Yes. I chronically got migraines in high school for a long time too. And then they obviously prescribed some sort of, you know, massive Tylenol
Triptan?
type thing. Yeah, something for me because they said it was athletically induced migraines. I think that's what they called it.
Well, I will beg to differ because my understanding of the serotonin pathways, migraines are triggered by low serotonin.
Mm, look at that. I'm learning so much.
But isn't that cool?
It is. It's honestly, it's really cool because I used to be of the mindset where I didn't look anything up, and you know, being naive is bliss, and all. And now, like, I research everything, and it's almost too much. But I'd rather know what I can do, right? So if I'm using a gas stove now, we turn on the hood. Like,
Yes,
are we?
before you light
Yeah,
it.
right. So
Before.
because that you
Yeah.
can smell that right away.
Yes.
So you know those little things we can do, and it's not say that you listen to this podcast with Dr. Lynch. Who says get rid of the gas stoves and move out of the city and whatever. If you can, obviously you know do that. But it's about empowering yourself and having the know-how and the knowledge. And you even have tips in your book about, you know, and talk about like what plants to use or air filters or water purification, all these different things that if you have the means, go ahead. And as you said, it was like baby Bob or whatever, you gotta take the first step or crawl.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense, man. It
And
makes a lot
and
of
and
sense.
I also want to close with this statement too, at least on my end, is look, perfectionism is a sign of procrastination, or procrastination is a sign of perfectionism, however you want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
My eloquence is garbage sometimes, but
We'll clean it up for you.
yeah, thank you. Edit the hell out of that. So I just want you to take an action. Look, if you got a gas stove in your house, just like Joey said, turn on the hood. If you got a crappy hood, I don't care. Use it. You know, turn it on before you ignite the thing, and or maybe have Uber Eats deliver for a week, and then it's, you know, I don't know how much that stuff costs, but you know, just experiment and do some things. If you have a gas fire in your home, maybe don't use that for a while. That is a luxury thing that you can cut. And so just do things and take action on them. They're not going to be perfect, but just start.
Beautiful. All right, guys, make sure to check out Dr. Ben Lynch, Dirty Genes, Strategene, Seeking Health. Actually, if you want to go to Seeking Health, Joey December, you'll get 10% off, as you've been so kind to offer. And I'm sure everybody else appreciates that. I'm Joey Thurman. Here's another episode of the Fatter Future podcast. Remember, don't be a fatty, FADDY. Be a part. See, everybody laughs when I say that. Be a part of the future.